afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. It is over in Chicago. Rutgers over Michigan in the Big Ten tournament. Michigan bowing out by double figures in the Windy City to the Scarlet Knights. This is the Michigan basketball postgame live. I'm Dennis Fithian. It's great to be with you here. And, Michigan, their season is likely over now. They needed to, I would think, at least get this victory. They probably needed more, but it's not going to be a fun selection Sunday. I don't think Michigan's going to be, rolling in the cameras and, having everybody sitting around looking at the names rolling out. I think they know their fate, and their fate is that that they'll be home this year for the first time. Michigan, I know there's pandemic season in 2020, nobody played, so you have to go back to the 2015 season. John Beilein's team didn't make the tournament, and Michigan ends up with their final record of 17-15, 11-10, and a lot of shoulda, wouldas, and what if they could have won some close games. That's going to be part of it as you talk about it. We'll talk about this game. You can always get in feedback-wise, whatever you want to do to get your thoughts here on this game, on this season. What cost Michigan today? What cost Michigan this season? The numbers when the season is over here, 6 times, a half dozen times this year, Michigan was sitting there with under 10 seconds to go with the possession, with the ball. They had the ball, and they had a chance to take the lead or tie the game inside the final 10 seconds 6 times this year in regulation or overtime, and they lost all of those games. So, you got to win a couple of those ball games. You got to be able to figure out how to make some plays in crunch time, enough plays to be able to get yourself enough victories if you want to be in the NCAA tournament. And, that's they weren't able to. Now, today was a gigantic disappointment. Like, you have to come out and play like, the way Michigan played against Indiana after, the first 10 minutes, well, actually with a couple minutes to go in the half. And then the way they played against Illinois for the majority of that game, the team played like their NCAA tournament life depended on it. They played like there was no tomorrow. They played with desperation. And they didn't really play like that today. They got off to a good start, but it was actually Rutgers that actually just frustrated them and then just slammed the door on them in the second half. Say an embarrassing second half. It was a little bit of an embarrassing second half. I'm watching the game, and Hunter Dickinson had 13 points at the half. And, they talked to the head coach for Rutgers, Steve Peichel. You see the coaches at the half, and he's like, hey, pretty good game. We got to stop Dickinson. It's that's going to be what our focus is. That's what he says. And I don't know if the Michigan staff heard that or not, but that's what Rutgers did. They surrounded Hunter Dickinson. I wasn't in the Rutgers locker room there in Chicago, but here's what Peichel said. We are not going to allow them to just throw the ball into Hunter Dickinson. We are going to get in front of him. We are going to tip these passes that Rutgers tries, or that Michigan tries to throw into Hunter Dickinson. We're going to front him. We're going to double him. When he does catch the ball, we're going to run a guy at him. That's what they decided to do, and it was very effective. And Michigan had no counter. And the passiveness when you're making an entry pass, sure, you have the ball and the guy's down low, you throw the ball down to him, and then you let him go to work. Rutgers wasn't doing that. Rutgers is like, we're the bounce pass or any kind of pass that is going to go into Hunter Dickinson, the alarm bells are going off. We're going to try to get that pass before it gets into Hunter Dickinson. And how many times? I was counting them at one point, but then I'm like, I'm not going to sit around counting. It's the story of the game. Michigan would throw a little looping pass into Hunter Dickinson, and Rutgers would tip the ball away. Or Hunter Dickinson would get it down low, they would swat it away. Or Hunter Dickinson would have it, they'd come from behind, and they would take it away from him. And Michigan had no answers. You say, well, what are the answers? There's a lot of answers. The answer is, first of all, is getting very strong with the ball when you're passing and you're making the entry pass and when you're posting up. They weren't allowing the entry passes there. So you had to be a lot stronger, both passer and receiver in that situation, or you had to get Dickinson out. Now, Hunter Dickinson didn't get any help from anyone in this game. Michigan scored one field goal for almost the entire second half. There was a minute to go. They finally got another one. But other than that, one lousy field goal. Power outage, however you want to look at it. Outplayed, outcoached. It was a very poorly coached second half by Michigan. They had no answers. They had no adjustment for what it was obvious to what anybody that's ever watched basketball, what was going on, and Michigan just had no answers for it. Now, it would have felt better if Michigan had somebody stepping up on the outside, anybody that could have made some baskets in the second half, could have made some threes, could have made some post-ups, could have made anything, because nobody made anything. So nobody made anything, which just exasperated everything, because Michigan had one thing going. They had Hunter Dickinson, and Rutgers was going to be all over that, and they were going to make somebody else beat them, and nobody could step up and do anything. So it was a very, very troublesome, disappointing second half effort as Michigan bows out in the Big Ten tournament, where if they could have found a way to win the game, they could have put themselves in position where they could have went out there and played against Purdue and forced their way into the NCAA tournament. But now the offseason begins, where everybody looks at them and says, what happened? What's going on? What's the future going to look like for this team? And for, the next couple of days, people will, look, there'll be some Michigan fans. Look, this is a Michigan podcast. They'll be like, oh, let's be positive and let's root for the team. Those things are all fine. And those things are good. But also, you want passion from your fan base, and you want to say, what was really going on out there? And this isn't like the old days where there's nothing else going on and, you just got your maize and blue pom-poms. People understand a little bit about college basketball. And if they don't understand with the X's and the O's or what's going on, they watch enough to say, that's not a well-prepared team. That is not good basketball. And, today in the second half reminded me a little bit of, I don't know if it reminded me of the game. Michigan can go back to that Central game where they lost to wrap up 2022, and they can look at themselves in the mirror and they can say why. And I don't know the reason. I don't know if they were out all night the night before. I don't know if they had, bad tuna fish sandwiches before the game. I don't know if every single one of them didn't sleep good for some reason. I don't know what the reason is, but they played like dogs against Central Michigan. And yeah, not the kind of dog that everybody talks about, that I got the dog in me. They played like a bunch of dogs that were sleeping, and there was no excuse for that. I didn't watch that game. It wasn't available unless you had the Big Ten Plus. I listened to Terry Mills, the former Wolverine. And 5 minutes in, he's like, Michigan looks a little sleepy. 10 minutes in, he's like, Michigan looks a step slow. 15 minutes in, he's like, I don't like the effort from Michigan. At the half, he's like, Michigan has got poor effort here. He said it another half dozen times in the second half. Michigan's not bringing the effort here today against Central Michigan. That's inexcusable. So they were doing something. Unless they just decided that, that they were just going to, slide around out there because it was Central. Well, that's on the coach. But maybe it's on the players. I haven't figured out exactly what was going on there. And then all the close losses, and there is a part like, hey, it's good that you're able to stay in ball games. But, there's a million teams that can stay in a ball game to a minute or two. The side of the road is littered with teams that don't make up the NCAA tournament, or that are mid teams, or that are bad teams that stay in ball games left and right, but can't make a play down the stretch to save their life. That's what this team is. So while it's a fact that, hey, boy, they can stay in a ball game. Boy, they can really stay in a ball game. But they can't make a winning play, enough winning plays to save their season. And that's the tail of the tape for this Michigan team. Very disappointing, and they all have to look themselves in the mirror. There was another point in that Iowa game. Juwan Howard is usually very supportive of all of his players. And, I've heard him talk enough because, like, he said, you'll hear it from people on Twitter. You'll hear it from the fans. They'll be browbeating him. So he just, takes the approach like he's just going to be positive. I understand that. And, almost every other coach does the same thing. Izzo will throw his players while, patting them on the back. Then he'll throw them under the bus. He's got that passive-aggressive thing that we've seen. But this isn't about Tom Izzo. This is about Juwan Howard. He's almost always positive about his team, except after that Iowa game. He's like, I don't know what they were doing. Maybe it was the Indiana game. I'm not sure. They weren't listening. They weren't listening to the coaches. So I've got two examples this year that are pretty frustrating if you're just watching the ball games and you're like, what's going on with Michigan basketball? The Central Michigan game. What were they doing the night before? What did they eat the day before the game? What was the pregame meal? Why wouldn't they give an effort, any effort, against Central Michigan? Did they think that they were too good because they had played some MAC teams that had taken them to the freaking wire? There was no reason to be a big time in anybody. They had no room to big time anybody this year, and yet here they were, big time in Central? Or they had a bad pregame meal, or they were out all night the night before. I don't know what it was. That's just the way it looked. Not to me, to the home broadcast team. I want to know what they talked about at the half. Let's just keep going to Hunter. Well, what happens when, Rutgers is very aggressive and starts going after the Let's make sure that these entry passes, that we're not just looping them in there. We're not just, bouncing it in there, like this is some kind of pickup game. Michigan was playing pickup entry pass ball today in the tournament, in the Big Ten tournament, with their tournament lives at stake. They were patting the ball. They couldn't have been any more casual with their possessions. What is it, So they're not good enough. We know that. And they didn't coach very well today. And I've been standing up for Juwan Howard because I think he's, in a lot of these games, he's put the guys in position. They just haven't been able to make the shots. But not today. Howard was right there with them. He took today off. What was he doing last night? He's in his hometown. Maybe he was out. What was the staff doing? They didn't want to continue. I want to check the bus. I don't think Michigan packed for more than one day. I think they all showed up, and everybody's like, hey, where's the cases and everything? In case we got to be here for 4 days. Everybody's like, we don't need anything. We're good. Nobody packed for more than one day. Did Juwan Howard pack for more than one day? Hunter might have packed for more than one day. That's it. Nobody else thought they were going to play for more than one day today. These guys have already, they've got their off-season eyes. And maybe it's, where I'm heading to the NBA or I'm out of here. Good. The quicker you can make the decision that way, the better. I'm a little perplexed about some of the rotations in these couple of these games. I get that Joey Baker airmailed the ball with everything on the line to tie the game up in the double overtime against Illinois. I get it. Sucked for him. Really did. That's every kid's dream. He blew it. Totally blew it. And then it was worse for him the next game against Indiana because Michigan was dying for somebody to hit an outside shot and they wouldn't put him in. He had to be sitting down there on the bench going, not only is my worst fears realized where I airballed the shot, but now the coaches, nobody has any confidence in me. That must have been a tough couple nights for Joey Baker. His entire basketball career, nobody believes in him, and he's sitting down there. And then today, they decided, hey, we're going to put him in. Kind of a surprise. We didn't trust him against Indiana, but now we do. Okay. All right, whatever. I wasn't there at practice. I didn't see. And then right at the end of the half, Michigan or Rutgers had made their run, and Michigan threw the ball to Joey Baker with the clock running down, and he dialed up a three. And I thought, oh no, if he shoots an air ball, this is going to be one of the worst scenes that I've ever seen. But you know what? He drilled it. Nothing but air. It was wet. Boom, big splash. I felt great for the kid. That had to feel really good running off the floor. He couldn't get on the floor in the second half. I don't understand that. Michigan couldn't make a shot in the second half. Not one single shot is all they made. One. But they couldn't bring in Baker. Now, if he didn't make any in the first half, they just may have decided with the staff, like, he's a self-check. It's over. His career's over, which I get. It's harsh. It's big boy basketball. It's harsh. But he made one. So why wouldn't you put him back out there? Why is Terrence Williams II, TW2, like, now I'm Michael Jordan. I'm in the Windy City. He probably went out and saw the statue. Because now he's with the clock running down, instead of taking it hard to the basket, a guy that has showed up on the score sheet like once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month. Once to 2 weeks is generous. But he sees the statue of Jordan, and rather than saying, I'm going to take the ball hard here, he decides that he's going to come up with some Jordan fade away on the baseline with what? You're not MJ, TW2. You're not MJ. He thought he was MJ. Everybody likes Kobe Buffkin, myself included, but if you're, I know that he had a nice end of the season and he's a young guy and everything, but if I'm an NBA team, am I picking that guy in the first round right now? Absolutely not. This was not very positive for Buffkin if his handlers or himself, look, these guys can all do whatever they want. Good luck. He didn't look anything like any kind of NBA prospect today. And Jet Howard made a couple baskets at the end of the Illinois game, made a big one. They would have never went into overtime, let alone double overtime against Illinois. But Jet Howard, a long time ago, there was a basketball player named Dominique Wilkins. You may have heard of him. The Human Highlight film. He could dunk. He was one of the greatest players of all time. Certainly one of the greatest dunkers of all time. He actually should have won the dunk contest over Jordan in Chicago, back in '85. But that's not really what I'm talking about. And I'm not even talking about Dominique. I'm talking about his brother. Dominique had a brother named Gerald Wilkins. And here's the thing about what Gerald Wilkins would do. You would watch a game when Wilkins, he was playing for the Knicks. And Gerald Wilkins would go off. Like Gerald Wilkins would get the ball. And you'd be like, wow, Gerald Wilkins looks like an all-star. This Gerald Wilkins is a great player. But then the second quarter would start. And Gerald Wilkins wouldn't do anything. And then he would get to the second half and he would barely play. Sometimes he'd be in the fourth quarter and they would almost always say the same thing, the announcer. Gerald Wilkins had 12 points in the first quarter, and now he has 13. Shot a free throw in the third. Guy averaged 12 points in the first quarter and 1.2 points the rest of the game for his career. Jet Howard, a little streaky. But he starts the game, and, he looks like, if these NBA scouts are watching the first 5 minutes of the game, they're like, we're going to take Jet Howard in the lottery. But if they showed up late, they're like back in the media room having some of the free food or something. They got out there like 5-6 minutes into the game, and they're like, well, let's start watching Jet Howard. They're like, this guy, this guy completely disappears. This guy's a little lax with the ball. This guy doesn't demand the ball. He didn't play any defense. We knew, but he doesn't do anything. Hopefully they were there for the entire game if they're out there scouting him. If you're a good scout, don't be back in the media room grabbing some extra free food. Get out there for the start of the game, or you're going to miss it. Jet Howard's the greatest first 5-minute player in basketball that I've ever seen. but he's going to have to be a little bit more consistent than that. Having said that, I hope he comes back to Michigan. I hope Kobe Buffkin. I loved what I saw from him this year. I didn't think that he was a player of the Big Ten. After what I saw from last year, I thought, man, it'd be nice coming off the bench, but you're counting on Kobe Buffkin, and then he just demolished all that. Almost every game, he'd go out and say, oh, how do you like me now? Look at how I'm playing. Fabulous year. Not today. Not today. But for the majority of the season, he was fabulous. So that's where I'm at. That's all I have to say about this year's team. I'm going to take some of the feedback and read it here. I'll go through the game as I took some notes, and I'll put those notes up on the screen. But let's take a little bit and see what people on the feedback, or anybody that's listening out there and want to get a call in, you can do that as well. You can do that on Twitter. Raise your hand. You can get in, and I'll put you up, and you can say whatever you would like if you want to get in. Chris on Twitter says this was the hardest game to watch. This team is not even worthy of an NIT bid. Chris, that's very harsh. Now, today they didn't look like they were NIT worthy, but the record says they are NIT worthy. So you have to have a winning record to be NIT worthy. So they will be in the nobody's interested tournament. Besides, save a few Michigan fans. Jason says it was swearing, or he just says, I swear they need to draw up something other than Hunter down low. This could be a long game. So he was sending feedback during the game, Jason. During the game, 6 minutes left, horrible. He's talking about Juwan needing serious help during the game. It was getting out of hand. And he did not like what was going on. He's quoting the announcer. If I was Michigan, I would draw something up for Hunter. JP said he can't watch this anymore. And, I get that part. The second half was one of the worst halves of basketball with what was at stake in Michigan history. Unfortunately, let's just call it what it is. You want to, you want something else? I'm just telling you what I saw. And after every game, I've tried to give this team, I'm a glass half full type guy. But, the glass is not half full as we sit here today, or it's half full of Drano. Jason is apologizing for being salty during the game. He said it was crazy. Let's get some more in here. Like, if I'm over here yelling and screaming about it, what are people going to be saying on the chat? Well, I think you can expect a lot of saltiness, as Jason put it. Daniel said it was a pathetic effort, embarrassing. Thank God it was at noon and the whole country didn't see it. Wow. Well, Daniel, I can't disagree with you there. Scott says, I have not been part of the Fire Juwan crowd, but we cannot go through another year of this to get the obvious need of new leadership. Yeah, well, here's the way I look at it, Scott. I mean, it's Juwan Howard deserves criticism. This team didn't get into the tournament. This team had a number of opportunities. They had big leads in a lot of games against good opponents, couldn't hang on to it. They had a half dozen times. They had the ball with 10 seconds to go and they couldn't win the game. So, yeah, some of those are tough luck. And, man, look at this and look at that. But, overall, you got to do better as a head coach. You got to do better as a staff. Juwan Howard will know that. And now we have in the final analysis, it was a disappointing year and a kind of season that can get you fired. Meanwhile, he's not getting fired. That would be a little bit knee jerk. And, right after a game where they play pathetic, people are going to be knee jerk. And even, during the season, as the thing was fun, you'll if you don't want to call it knee jerk or whatever else, he's going to get another year, whether you like it or not. And he deserves another year in my mind, as bad as things went and how it went down. He deserves another year to see what he can do. And, knowing Ward Manuel, I know Jim Harbaugh was accomplished before, he came into Michigan, but, Jim Harbaugh got as long as leash as anybody could have ever gotten. And Juwan Howard is going to get a leash at least next year. Heck, now, if we're sitting here the same time next year, it could be, I'm not over here saying, let's, look at how long Jim Harbaugh got. That's getting ahead of ourselves saying if I'm going to be in the same spot next year. But this offseason, sure, you can say anything you want, and almost all of it would be true. But Juwan Howard does not deserve to be fired over this. So I don't know, like, you might not like that, Scott, and you might just be ready for hockey tomorrow night against Ohio State. And I get that. Dees is jumping in, and Dees says, I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do and freak out. Frankly, I'm done with Michigan basketball to the Howards, plural, Dickinson, and all of them are gone. Yeah, well, that's a little bit of freaking out. Like, and I get it. Again, like, we're only trying to be measured. When you ask people, like, to get all fired up for the team and, follow the team passionately, and then they put a performance like this together, showing up afterwards and saying, hey, guys, have a great offseason. We'll be back for you. And you will be. There's a lot of things like, well, Hunter Dickinson's still a good college basketball player. I hope he comes back to Michigan. I already said the same thing about Jet and Juwan. Now, Jace, I don't know. Jace was, didn't bring much this year, but I don't know where he's going. Maybe off scholarship. Scott's looking towards the track championships. I like how people, this is what you do. You get your mind somewhere else. Get yourself to the track championships. Get yourself to, hockey. D's following up and wants to talk about a highlight about them not boxing out the free throw shooter. He missed it, got it, his own rebound, and scored. He's talking about his niece's girls basketball knows how to box out. WTF twice. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. If you're at your niece's basketball, I don't know what, how old she is, but you see that and you're like, whoever the coach is, it's like, we work on that. We work on boxing out. But, this is big time basketball. That was an embarrassment, Dees. I wasn't going to bring that up. I forgot about that, but now that you mention it, that was terrible. It was. And they deserve to be criticized. Everybody. For that one single play. That was horrible. Eric says it was embarrassing. Hopefully they return everyone to salvage Juwan's job. Never would have happened under Beeline. He would take an 8 seed to win the tournament and not shoot under 10% in the second half. Yeah. Well, remember, even after, I was thinking of John Beeline today because I was going back when this Jim Boeheim retired yesterday, or whether it was the day before. I think it was last night. And so I was recalling things with Jim Boeheim. Of course, Michigan beat Syracuse in 2013 in the Final Four to get to the championship game. John Beeline. But after the championship game, John Beeline, I was thinking, John Beeline's going to start recruiting even, he's going to recruit better. He's going to start grabbing 5 stars. I know he had the monster McGarry and stuff on that team, but he continued kind of going after guys from New Hampshire and, stuff like this, kind of odd, his way of recruiting. I'd say odd. It worked for him, obviously, and he's was a great coach. But they didn't make the tournament. And then in 2015, they didn't make the tournament. And then the next year, they made the play-in. And yeah, so, and it's tough for Juwan Howard. This is when they say it's tough to follow a legend because people think about John Beeline and they just think John Beeline was the greatest coach of all time. And John Beeline's team would have, they never played, poorly. They always showed up. They always rang the bell, that kind of stuff. And so when you have to follow somebody like Beeline, it things that you do, you get no credit. I've seen, Juwan Howard gets no credit for the first year of the Big Ten championship. Those were Beeline's DNA team, and it's just these last 2 years, like now that's Juwan's team. And there's a little bit of truth to that, but the thing is, it's tough to follow a legend. That's why they say that. Todd asking a question. Do you think they play in a tournament like the NIT? Is Hunter Dickinson going to leave for the NBA? Same thing with Kobe. They might even want to transfer, believe it or not. All right, we'll take these 3 questions. I think that they should play in the NIT. What's the reason that you wouldn't play in the NIT? Like, they're too good, like they were against Central, like they got a lot of. How many times did Juwan Howard this year say, we got the youngest team? Young teams need to play basketball and they need the experience. I'd like to see Terrace Reed Jr. and Doug McDaniel get the experience of playing in the NIT, even if nobody's watching it. Even if nobody shows up at the Chrysler Center, I would like to see him play in the NIT. Michigan basketball is not in any spot to be anybody looking down anybody's nose and saying, we don't play in the NIT. No, they're going to play in the NIT. They should play in the NIT. Is Hunter Dickinson going to leave for the NBA? Hunter Dickinson might leave, and he might want to leave for the NBA, but Hunter Dickinson is not going to play in the NBA. Maybe he'll play like in Japan, like the big man from Illinois last year, if you remember him, Kofi Coburn. Pretty good player. He's not playing in the NBA. He went to Japan. Make a couple 100,000. I guess you could even make $1 million in Japan. But I don't know how much NIL, not NIT, NIL Hunter Dickinson's getting. Would Michigan give him enough to come back where, he's not thinking about, going to Japan? I think he would get more than he would on some kind of two-way contract. Maybe not, of playing like in the G League for an NBA team. I think it's more likely than not that Hunter Dickinson comes back. I like Hunter Dickinson as a player. I didn't care for the ski mask routine. I also didn't care for him, calling another team's fan base scumbags. I know some people's like, that's what college basketball is all about. That's what the guy that was doing the podcast said of him. I saw a former Wolverine who did, maybe he still does a podcast, Stu Douglas, saying that, he really liked the ski mask. I didn't. And I like to show a certain amount of respect for the game. I've never seen anyone, walk in wearing a ski mask at a basketball game, and then, you lost the game too. And, calling the other team, this isn't big time wrestling. If he wants to go into big time wrestling, go into big time wrestling. It's college basketball. Show some respect for the game and your opponent. You want to go on podcasts and talk? Talk. Calling other teams scumbags? I would like, hopefully he can clean a little bit of that up. But like I said, I like him as a player. I hope he comes back. I don't know what Buffkin, Buffkin and Jed Howard are the ones that they pop up in mock drafts in the first round. And as we saw last year with Caleb Houston, who didn't go in the first round, or Musa Diabate, you can still get $4 million. I think Houston got guaranteed, and he wasn't even a first round pick. So when you say like, those guys don't look really like, but it doesn't matter what they look like. What it matters is if a team drafts them. Because I was looking, the guy that got picked, he was from Kansas. Okabaji, I think, went to Cleveland with the 15th pick. Where I saw Jet projected. That guy got $20 million guaranteed. Doesn't really matter if Jet, is ready to play or not. If somebody's going to give you $20 million guaranteed, you can go. And it's the same thing with Kobe. If he's thinking somebody's going to give me at least $4 million guaranteed, he could take off. I hope they make their decision sooner rather than later. I'd like to have them both back, but I don't know. Getting dangled, getting anywhere from $4 to $20 million, thinking about, I'm out. I can understand taking the money. Mark ready to go over to the women's gymnastics team. So we've had track and field, hockey, women's gymnastics. There you go, Mark. Basketball team looks scarily like the Washington Generals, the team that loses to the Harlem Globetrotters. There you go. Hadley's ready to move on too. Let's just talk about football. There you go, Hadley. Hadley's got his Michigan play sheet over there. Michigan loses, go to Michigan football. You always have that one. No matter what sport you're there, Michigan loses, any sport, talk Michigan football. That's a good one, Hadley. It's a good, always default. But yeah, go to track and field, go to hockey, go to women's basketball. Hadley, who is the biggest Michigan fan that I have ever, and I've known him now for a couple years. This is and he is a very positive guy here, but this is very insulting towards his maize and blue when he types in, I'm not even watching them in the NIT. Ooh. I mean, this is pretty harsh stuff. You're talking about Hadley, who all day, every day is rooting for Michigan. And he is not watching the NIT. Hockey. Let's see. Robert is getting in. He says he's talking NIT. The team needs to decline the NIT invite. It's a bad team that needs to stay home and focus on fundamentals like boxing out. Yeah, you change your opinion, Robert. I mean, look, it's kind of like you can work on boxing out in the NIT. You know, it's another team. They need to work. You need the simulated action. When you say, go home, just go home. Just don't, and nobody can, but the team needs it. But even if it's Terrace Reed shooting free throws or Doug McDaniel running the team as a point guard and whoever else that you might want to put out there. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they should decline the NIT bid. It's pretty bad here. Mark's talking about making them look like Rutgers, or making Rutgers look like Houston. Dees didn't like, some of the criticism here. Robert saying, why are you talking about these guys going to the NBA? I don't know. They showed up in some of the mock drafts. Graham jumping in, saying that Michigan doesn't deserve to be in. And no, they got a winning record. They do deserve. I mean, what are we talking about? The NIT, or are we talking about the NCAA tournament? Let's just clarify that. Nobody thinks that they deserve to be in the NCAA tournament, but 17 and 15 does qualify them for the NIT grant. Kent says, asking a question, has Jawan showed anything positive? They need to go back into the workshop and start with fundamentals. Well, let's pick up that question. Has Jawan shown anything positive in the second half of the game today? No. I that was one of the worst halves that I've ever seen from any coach at any level at basketball. So that was, he ended on a real negative. This year, did they show anything positive? They fought to the end. They played hard. I mean, these are not nice. These are things that, you don't care about when a team doesn't get into the tournament, besides however you felt about the Dickinson mask routine and, calling other teams scumbags, they played hard and weren't really embarrassing, the university, they didn't have anything like that off the court. But, in Jawan's first year, a lot of people like, Juwan Howard like this and talking about him positively right now. It's not really like what people want to hear, but I saw the team because I didn't know, Juwan Howard, Fab Five, was that going to work when it came down to recruiting and all that? Well, I didn't know what kind of coach he was going to be. But the first year I saw the team playing the I don't know, was it a preseason tournament? Yeah, they went down to Atlantis in the Bahamas. And, I watched the team and I'm like, "Oh, this team looks well coached. Team's got some flow on offense." I liked how they played, man. They played together, and I saw the X's and O's, and I know that everyone's like, "Oh, it was all John Beeline's guys." Not all of them. And you still have to, as a coach, when you come in, there's a lot of guys like Castleton and Julius. I mean, they jump ship. You have to retain some of the players. So that's one thing. You're also, you have to coach them in the preseason and then come up with a starting five. And then you have to work the rotations. And then in a game, you got to sub guys in and out. And you got to draw up the plays and get them ready. I mean, those are no small things. Everybody's like, it's just the other coach's team. No, that was his first year, and I saw it against down there in that Atlantis tournament. I saw a well-coached team and a team that could play together. So I thought that was a positive. Michigan would have made the tournament that year if there wasn't a pandemic. Nice job, Juwan Howard. Now, his second season, they won the Big Ten. And Juwan Howard, during the pandemic, was an outstanding representative for the University of Michigan. I thought he handled, and it's no small thing to handle all the stuff that was going on with the pandemic. I thought Howard did a fabulous job. And the team responded out on the floor, and they won the Big Ten. And they deserve the credit. He deserved the credit. And, what I found with that team is that if you surround Hunter Dickinson with four shooters, you got something going. This Dickinson can be a force. And then if you don't have any holes on the outside, and, he brought in Mike Smith and Shawnee Brown, those guys, he hit the jackpot in the transfer portal. I thought, nice job, nice coach, fabulous. I mean, they came they had 3 shots with like under 30 seconds to go, including Franz Wagner, a wide open 3 to beat UCLA. They would have been in the Final Four. He would have had that on his resume already, which would have been really nice. So fabulous season. I saw a lot from Juwan Howard that year. Now, last year, it was rough. It was rough most of the way, but they found a way. They had Devontae Jones late, kind of rounded into form. They made plays in some big games late, like down at Ohio State without Hunter Dickinson, and got into the tournament and beat Colorado State and then beat Tennessee. And they turned a kind of not so hot regular season into a positive. Last year was ended up being a good season for Michigan. This year, a lot of it was following those same lines, like you didn't know, and they could have ended up with one freaking shot. Maybe they would have had a chance, to do some things. But this year ends up being a bad season. So I know that was a long answer to have I seen anything, from Juwan Howard. The answer to me is I have seen some things. Scott is talking about the offensive effort, but they really suck on defense. Beeline's team became better on defense as the season matured. Beilein figured out that he was not all that good of a defensive coach himself, and they brought in Luke Yaklich. And Yaklich had a huge effect on the Michigan defense. It was huge. Again, huge for Michigan. So there might be, Juwan might be looking for somebody, with his staff. A lot of times that happens. You have a bad season and you just keep everything rolling, or, do you make a change with the staff? Sometimes you do. Michigan doesn't have very good numbers defensively. They weren't, if you look at Ken Pom, I think they're in the 50s, but if you look at Michigan's defensive efficiency, they're in the hundreds of this team. And they don't really have, Dickinson usually guards his opposite number pretty well. I mean, he's not the greatest defender, but he's not half bad. I don't mind Dickinson as a defender. But I don't know, Doug McDaniel's on the small side, so I think he gets taken advantage sometimes, but he got some quick hands and he comes up with some steals. Buffkin's made a lot of strides. Last year he was terrible. But this team, they don't guard very well. They don't sit down and get after you. And, that's just not, in your face. They're not a very good defensive team. So that's part of it. They were more, and I know that it's got to hurt Juwan Howard because that's what he emphasizes and everything else. Uh-oh. We've got LaRon talking about Ohio State being scumbags. Yeah, that's true. We're with you on that. Here's people asking me about wrestling and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's going to be some other things. The NIT, I think, will be a lock. I guess. Yeah, I mean, the NIT will want Michigan in there. NIT will. Michigan will probably host a first round NIT game. Michigan Bradley, Tuesday at the Chrysler Center. Who's in? Count 22. Did not like the effort today. We've already been down the fire Juwan road. We know that is not happening. So let me just go through the game a little bit. Chris, bringing back what he was saying last game about the point guard. Pretty much starts and ends there. Too much pressure on the other young and soft players. Nice hair, though. Yeah. Here's somebody that wants to just doesn't want to give Juwan any credit for the first 2 years because of Beeline's players. There's a point, like I said, we can go over that. Mostly when people, they only use it negatively. When you're following a legend, it's never like you still have to get things out of those players. It's fine. There's a lot of people that agree with you. They love saying that. That is Beeline's teams. Give no credit to Juwan Howard. Let's look at this game in the first half, all the way back at noon today. Seems like a long time ago now. Michigan actually looked pretty good at the start of the game. For the majority of the first half, they were out there and like, okay. But, Rutgers was staying around. They made this 8-0 run, and they got close, took a little bit of a lead. Michigan came back. Rutgers took a little bit. And then Joey Baker drains a three at the buzzer to give Michigan a 3-point lead at the half. Hunter Dickinson led all scores at the half, and then they interviewed Steve Peichel, the Rutgers coach, at the break, and he's like, we got to deal with Hunter Dickinson. And they dealt with Hunter Dickinson because Michigan in the second half is like, let's just keep going to Hunter Dickinson. And U of M got down for the first time out on the floor. 4 minutes in, they were down 5. Then they were down 6 with 9 minutes to go. They got kind of hovering in there. But the only thing that Michigan had going in the second half, it wasn't a lot. They just were trying to feed it to Hunter Dickinson in the post. And, the Scarlet Knights were doing everything they could to stop that. Stealing the ball, jumping the inbounds pass, and everything else. And Michigan had no counters. They had nobody else stepping up doing anything else. And it was really frustrating to watch. This is where the game was won. It was with 6.5 to go. Rutgers got a backside steal from Dickinson. He didn't see the guy coming, ripped the ball from him, went down, got a score. They got it down to Dickinson again. He got blocked. And then there was a 3-pointer, and just like that, there was 5 plays. They were down 6 with 6.5. That was doable. But giving up those 5 plays, this sequence right here, this was the ball game. The steal and score, the block and 3, down 11. That was pretty much your ball game. Michigan could make a basket to save their tournament life. 1 field goal in the second half to like a minute to go. That's too big of a scoring drought to beat anybody. They're down 13. Bufkin had a miss. No one got back. That was one of those things like the walk-in layup from the guy that shot it. That was like, junior high type stuff or middle school type stuff. That's not going to make you look good. This one didn't either. They're down 11. They got to let everything all hang out. Bufkin just misses a shot. No sin there, but, letting the other team leak out and get a layup to make it 13, it was over. No production in the second half. Stephen Bardo said that they looked tentative. Yeah, they looked tentative. They sure did. Let's check the upcoming schedule. That is brought to you by Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon. Michigan football and basketball, 1 o'clock weekdays. Means that this feed right now that you're listening to, watching, will be here tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I was hoping that Michigan was going to be playing Purdue, but as you know, that's not the case. The schedule is pretty easy to go over now. You look at the bracket and the 8-9 game, I have went ahead with the Sharpie and put Rutgers against Purdue tomorrow. You got the Spartans that are playing today. You've got, I'm sorry, the Spartans are not playing today. I skipped ahead. I was looking at tomorrow's lineup with Rutgers and Purdue. You got Ohio State and Iowa who are playing right now in a low scoring game. And then you got Penn State, Illinois, and Minnesota. The surprise I got in there against Maryland. State will get the Ohio State Iowa winner tomorrow after the Rutgers Purdue game. So that's it when it comes down to the bracket. I picked Michigan. So that doesn't make me feel very good. The upcoming schedule tomorrow, noon start versus Purdue. That's where Rutgers will be. Michigan, waiting until selection Sunday. Like I would not want to, if they are throwing a selection Sunday get together party, I wouldn't want to be at that. I like parties, but not that kind of party. Come on over. We'll watch the selection show. They got the cameras on us. Everybody's going to be watching them peeling off the names. The last one comes up. That's not fun. Maybe they'll have maybe they'll have an NIT selection show. What are you going to do? They deserve a little bit of that. It's not fun talking about NIT selection shows, but, that's it. That's where it's at. Count 22 did not feel like the 18 minutes with one field goal was very good for him. Really? You didn't like that? D's talking about some of the changes that he would like to see with the team. LP talking about basketball just nowadays, saying the kids today have no basic concept of how the game is played, which is why Dickinson was hit in the back instead of the ball being shot. Again, dunks and threes are all kids are about. Yeah, I mean, you got a point there. Chi-Town getting in, saying he's a Michigan fan, but Howard must be fired. Yeah, that's not happening. Like, look, I think that I'm going to repeat myself here again, Chi-Town, and I appreciate the tip and everything, and you wanting to go after Tony Bennett, but and I understand. Like, I don't think I get like you should be really frustrated. You're a Michigan fan. This team underachieved. What happened against Central Michigan? Why wasn't this team listening to the coaches when, Juwan Howard was asked, what was going on, and he's never said a cross word with his team. And he's like, they weren't listening to me. Where was the effort in the second half today that they had against Indiana and Illinois? All very fair things. Looking at Juwan Howard and saying, hey, you had a really bad year, Juwan. All fair. But, firing him. And look, you say it. I mean, I got to tell you, like, oh, don't say it. You say whatever you want. But if you're asking me, if I was in charge, would I fire Juwan Howard? And the answer would be no. If you're asking me, do I think that Ward Manuel, who gave Jim Harbaugh, who went 0 for 5, would have been 0 for 6 against Ohio State, gave him another year? I don't think that I'll guarantee that Ward Manuel won't fire him. Now look, I don't know, it's sports, so you start thinking about like the craziest things that could happen. I don't know. Juwan Howard might want to go to the NBA. I mean, he's not going to get no team's going to hire him as a head coach. The reason I say all this is because John Beeline lives in Ann Arbor, and he works right down the street. for the Pistons. And you got old John Beeline right there, but I don't think Juwan Howard's just going to, step down. I don't think he's going to step down. And I don't think Ward, you want to get Ward in there and somehow, we'd be in the situation, Chi-Town, where, it would be it would be wild. It would be crazy. I don't know, would it be wild or crazy? It would just be something that nobody is predicting. And I don't even know if it's worth talking about. And meanwhile, I just spent a minute talking about it. But the only reason I talk about it, and I know you're saying Tony Bennett, and I don't know why is Tony Bennett leaving Virginia. I don't know why. I mean, he's in a really good spot. I don't think he is. But it's the Beeline piece. It's because he lives in Ann Arbor. That's the only reason I bring it up. I mean, he's right there. He could walk down the Chrysler, probably take him like 5 minutes. He could be in the building. But that's the only reason I bring it up. That and the terrible conclusion of the season. But I wouldn't do it, and I don't think there's any way that Ward does it. So that's it. We know that Jet and Kobe are not NBA ready, but are they NBA draftable? That's the question. Because I haven't put together a mock draft myself, but I watched the dude from just 2 weeks ago from The Athletic put one together, and he had Jet going 15, which is at least 20 million guaranteed, and he had Kobe going in the 20s. Kobe played pretty well in the last 2 weeks, except today. He didn't. So you're talking about, $8-10 million guaranteed, those are tough things. Like we could sit around talking about they're not NBA ready at all. Who cares? Somebody's going to give you 20 million. Who cares if you're NBA ready? Yeah, defense was a problem all year long. Andres was fishing. He's been smart. He didn't watch the game. He's sure the box score tells the tale. Happy Thursday on the spring ball. Yeah, Andres, Michigan scored one field goal in the first 19 minutes of the second half. I think that's right. Pretty close to that. One field goal, only 20 minutes in the half. They got one, with under a minute, and then Kobe hit one late. One field goal, a couple free throws. Other than that, nothing else. That's why they lost the game. Guys got a lot to work on. D's saying that Jet is a spot-up shooter. He's one-dimensional. He's one-dimensional where you would say he's a scorer. I don't think he's just a spot-up shooter. I think he can spot up, but I also think he can shake somebody out of their shoes, and he can throw a shimmy on you. Next thing you know, he can take a step back on you. That's not just being a spot-up shooter. And then he can take you to the right and pull up. That's not being just a spot-up shooter. He can take it to the rack. He can Euro step you. He can finish with both hands. He's a really nice scorer. Jet Howard. Michigan had a guy that played 19 years in the NBA that reminds me a little bit of Jet Howard by the name of Jamal Crawford. And Jamal Crawford was just given the ball and, to watch him, throw some shakes and throw up some shots. That's what Jet is. But Jet, that was Jamal Crawford. So he still might be a first-round pick. Who knows? Okay, couple more here. Couple more. Doing this for an hour. They didn't hit shots all year. The plays got them open all year. I don't know about the plays all year long, weak passing. I mean, it's we're kind of going over the same stuff here. Let's see. Blake, will Michigan make the tournament? Yes, they will make the NIT tournament, but they're not making the NCAA tournament. No, no, Blake, it's not happening. I don't sit there. They don't deserve to be in the tournament. Look, it doesn't. They're not going to get into the tournament. They've got a resume. It's like I don't know. There's a lot of different things you could put it like. Like it'd be kind of like me applying for like some neurosurgeon job. Going through all the things. I'm applying. I'm not sitting around holding my breath that I'm going to get a call back. Nah, it's not like that. I know they're the court like nobody had him in the tournament. Everybody had him out of the tournament. Nobody had him in that I saw. But they were right on the bubble, and then they lost. Now, they may have been in if they just won today. I still don't think. I don't think that they would have gotten if they would have just won today. I think they had to beat Purdue too. Then I would have felt okay about their chances. One win, it would have been, I don't know if it would have been the biggest shock in the world. But if somehow Michigan ended up on Sunday, these guys are going to be out. I don't think that they're going to be sitting together. They'll be just somewhere doing whatever, and all of a sudden Michigan's name, Michigan. I don't think so. I don't know. It'd be pretty surprising. Yeah, we bet over the should Michigan stay or home or whatever else. Let's see. People are bringing up some crazy things here. Gary says, tell Jim. Oh, I think this is tell Jim Scarcelli. Is that what this is? From Tiger Stadium, Domino's 87 from Gary. You put all these things together here, Gary, is that I worked at Domino's for a few years, not for the pizza. I was in radio. And then, but I think this is what this means. Jim Scarcelli. You're not trying to shout me out or something. That's for Scar. I'll try to remember that. In fact, let me see. I can copy this. Boom. I'll tell him you said hi. Chris says Frankie is light years better than McDaniels. I don't believe that. I mean, you can believe that. I mean, it's pretty close. I mean, I don't know. But let's, Chris, I like when you join. You came in late this season joining the chat, and you get a lot of hot takes. This is pretty hot. You want to say he's better? You can make a case. I'd have to put up the numbers and look. I like Frankie, but a light years better. Come on, that sounds like an exaggeration to me. And that's it. I'll take 3 more, and then that's going to do it for the season. David says Jet jogging back on D, not boxing out and shooting off balance threes with 15 on. I don't know. Yeah, I can see that. Andre says it's odd trolling. I think he sincerely thinks Jet is a great player. Chris again said on Sunday and lost me forever with that insanity. Williams not doing well. All right. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. After every Michigan football and basketball game, it's a disappointment. There's no doubt about that. If Michigan plays in the NIT, I think they will. I'll be on after those games. I think those games are all televised. I think they are. I guess even if they're not, I did a few games this year that weren't televised, but it was rough. Sunday, it's just starting now. I remember back when Michigan wasn't all that hot in basketball, like the Ellerby days, and maybe the beginning of the Tommy Amaker. I would go to the Big Ten tournament in Chicago and in Indianapolis. And, you get there, and there's nothing like it. I mean, it's just a celebration of college basketball the night before. You're in Indianapolis, let's face it, you're out partying, you're going for, bar hopping, but you see like all the colors from all the teams and everything. It's great. And you're watching all the games. But, back then, Michigan, they're playing in the first games, and then they would get beat. And then you're leaving just when everybody else is kind of coming in and getting ready for the weekend. And it happens, and sometimes I'd win some games, and then I'd sit there, it's all day today, all day tomorrow. It's, these next 2 days are great. Nice little appetizer for next week. I like Saturday and Sunday too, all throughout. But, going to Chicago and going to Indy in the Big Ten tournament is great. Michigan, heck, they're probably already home. We know they didn't have to get their bags. I think they packed lightly. That's the way it looked. That's the way they played. Sam showed up only to hit the like button and say thanks. Hello and go blue. That's a good way to end it up. I'll talk with you tomorrow at 1:00. Michigan bows out of the Big Ten tournament 62-50. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the week.